In today's interconnected world, companies need to protect their most valuable asset, their data. Data breaches can wreak havoc on businesses, shutting them down permanently. Data resilience isn't just about keeping the bad actors out of your data center. It's also about the ability to bring it back to operational once they do get in. The average cost of a data breach is approximately $4 million. The average cost per industry is even greater, all the way from education at about $5 million per breach to upward of $17.5 million for financial services. You need to keep in mind, with the rise in cyber incidents, vendors you rely on to help you recover your business may be inundated, leaving you to fend for yourself. Are you ready to shut the door on cyber threats?
Hi, my name is Akhtar Ali, and I am the Vice President of the India Systems Development Lab in IBM. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the critical topic of data resiliency. Data is the new gold. In today's information technology world, the lifeblood of a business critically depends on the data it needs to run its operations. Access and security of the data is therefore paramount, and that is a fact that is also well understood by those who want to illegally profit from it. Almost every day you hear of cases where data breaches and cyber crimes impact organizations, and the frequency and intensity of these keep increasing. And given that data resides on storage, as storage professionals, we have to play a very important role in safeguarding the data and thereby our businesses. This presentation has two purposes. I want to provide guidance on the best practices necessary to protect and recover data in the event of a threat. In addition, also highlight technologies available to help implement these best practices. But before I begin, I would like to take a moment to tell you about my organizational background so you get an idea of where I'm coming from. The India Systems Development Lab is unique in IBM in the sense that it is the only lab where we work across the entire systems portfolio, both across hardware and software, and also representing all the different business lines, namely mainframe or System Z, power systems, and storage. In India, we have locations in Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad, where some of the sharpest systems engineers develop offerings for the world's largest enterprise clients. I won't repeat what is on the slide, but you can see the sheer depth and breadth of engineering activity that happens in this lab. Now let's shift gears and focus on the topic of this session. First, I think it is important, if we are going to talk about data resilience, we should take a moment to define it. Data resilience is about two things: toughness, or the ability of the data to be available even when a threat strikes. This means the ability to recover quickly such that downtime is kept to a minimum. Data resilience is also about flexibility, or the ability to use and take advantage of the data in the environment. In that sense, we're talking about agility. Data is what sustains a business and provides its competitive edge. Locking it down such that it can't be taken advantage of doesn't really help the business. Businesses need both. They need the ability to ensure that the data is protected from malicious activity, human error, and natural disasters, but they also need the ability to utilize the data for analytics and reporting to more efficiently drive the business. A good data resilience strategy allows for both toughness and flexibility. When data isn't resilient, it costs business lots of money, both from a reputational aspect to loss of customers and even legal penalties. Today, it is critical that businesses ensure a data resilient infrastructure. Costs drive everything in IT. And the cost of something impact data availability can cost the business a great deal of money in downtime. When trying to architect a data resilient environment, we are often asked, how much does it cost? There are times when the act of doing nothing may just be smaller than the financial impact of doing something. The challenge is, it is next to impossible to predict when an event will happen and how it will impact the data. Is it just downtime and data inaccessibility for a few minutes? Or is it a natural disaster that could take days from which to recover? Or is it a ransomware attack that could cost the business money to try and get the data back? What is the cost of data inaccessibility to your business? Here we have outlined several statistics from a joint study by IBM Security and the Ponemon Institute that outline the cost of a data breach as recently as last year, and some of the data is really staggering. The average cost of any infrastructure failing resulting in data inaccessibility is $100,000 per hour. 19% of the reason that there is a data breach is that the credentials of the entity, be it a person or a software, have been compromised. The cost of a critical application failure can range between $500,000 to $1 million per hour. 80% of data breaches involve customer personal or sensitive identifiable information. When this data is breached, customer loyalty is lost, and it can result in millions of dollars, according to the study, to the tune of $1.5 million in lost business. Between the time it takes employees to find and fix the problem, employee time without access to data, customer and partner costs not having access to the data, the average cost of a data breach is $3.8 million. And when there's a massive data breach, defined as a breach of over 1 million records, that can cost a business well over $350 million. Knowing that an attempt at a ransom attack is taking place every 11 seconds, that's this year's statistic, 2/3 of CEOs cite cyber threats as their top concern these days. When people hear the term data breach, their immediate reaction is to think about cyber attacks. However, there are a number of things that can make up a data breach, including human error at 23%, system issues at 25%, and the biggest of them all, malicious attacks at 52%. Now, as long as there are humans in the data center, there will be human errors. It's unavoidable. We do our best. Things happen. And because for the most part, humans build systems, systems can fail as well. It is the malicious attacks or the activities that are done on purpose to generate harm that are the greatest threats to be vigilant about. The malicious activity shown here may not specifically call out ransomware or malware, but each category takes on some aspects of ransomware or malware. From compromised credentials to social engineering, each of these can be an impact generated by an outsider, sometimes an insider, acting as someone or something different to gain access to your information. What is important to understand is what is required to make sure the environment is as protected against these activities as possible. Most businesses have a number of capabilities in place to protect the business. However, as the ways in which malicious attacks continue to evolve rapidly, it is hard to keep up with the capabilities necessary to prevent these threats. We know that most customers have replication. However, errors can be both on the local and the replicated copy. Customers have some form of error detection, but these tend to be caught after the fact, once you've already had some kind of attack or loss. They may have single recovery points. However, if that copy of data is corrupt, that presents a challenge. Isolation is required. However, having everything in one isolated location can be problematic if that logical structure is impacted. And we know that most customers have some form of disaster recovery in place, or at least we hope they do. However, each of these capabilities need to be strengthened in today's threat climate. Having replication that provides point-in-time copies from an isolated secure location can help ensure faster recovery from a recovery point that can minimize data loss. Additionally, the ability to perform AI or ML on data copies to validate the data prior to an outage happening can also help speed the recovery process. Having multiple recovery points, again, help to minimize downtime. Multiple points of isolation can help to ensure that a device gets impacted from any malicious activity. There is always a fallback device, and if that device is air-gapped, it may take a bit longer to recover from, but the data will be safe and secure. And adding automation and deeper forensics can help recover the necessary data to ensure the fastest recovery will help to get the business back online as fast as possible. As a practitioner of data management, there are roughly 6 key capabilities that, when implemented, can help manage all of the malicious data breaches threats to keep the business operational, while at the same time helping to keep your costs under control, including not having to pay that nasty ransom. These practices start with ensuring applications in the environment have identity and administrative security that can help manage credentials and data access. This capability can protect against the biggest of the threat vectors, compromised credentials, and the malicious insider, which together account for 26% of the breaches. Next is the ability to monitor and identify data in the data protection environment for ransomware or malware, and take advantage of some of the latest artificial intelligence capabilities to determine data pattern anomalies to capture a threat before it can harm the data. Ensuring the business has pervasive encryption, starting at the primary storage layer all the way through backups in flight to where it is stored in the backup device. Having multiple layers of backup and utilizing the 3-2-1-1 methodology for protecting data can provide peace of mind necessary to know the business can be back up and running reasonably quickly. Protecting information in an isolated environment and using a physical or logical air gap can ensure data can't be compromised. And finally, when a threat does happen, the need to recover quickly is paramount, and the biggest hurdle in this endeavor becomes human error. Putting capabilities in place to automate recovery so the panic doesn't impede the recovery process can help ensure consistency, repeatability, and accuracy of the recovery process. We will dive into each of these capabilities in more detail over the next few slides. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter what data you have or where it lives for any of these best practices. Data can be on physical devices, in virtual machines, or in containers, and can live on-prem or in the cloud. These best practices apply and are the same. Proper application security can ensure that the users of applications and the applications themselves have proper data access in the environment. The capabilities that are needed are things such as identity security to help manage the credentials and acquisition of data, administrative security to manage the roles and rights to access the data, data level security to manage the location of where the data can live securely, bit level security to manage the integrity of the data, and container level security to manage the authenticity of the application that will be used to manage and protect the data. The way to read this wheel of security is the following. On the left side of the slide, each security component is represented with an icon, and that icon can be found in the circle to the right. The icon that pertains to the type of security is represented in a segment of the circle. And then within that segment are the capabilities that data resilience solutions can provide. As most customers know, IBM is the largest supplier of security solutions in the market. And that is why the storage systems division in IBM has partnered with our security division to take advantage of capabilities in the QRadar product. QRadar is now able to work with Spectrum Scale and IBM Cloud Object Storage solutions, as well as IBM Flash Systems with IBM Spectrum Virtualize. Doing so, we can detect threats in the environment in real time, such as checking audit logs for unusual or threat activity, such as out-of-hours login or creation of new user IDs. Once such a threat is identified, based on that activity, one can perform some actions such as take a secure copy of the data and or alert appropriate personnel. Additionally, IBM also has native capabilities in its system solution to monitor and identify data, including workload pattern anomaly on IBM Flash Systems with storage insights. Insights can monitor performance deviations and data reduction rates, as these can be signs that data has been impacted by some ransomware or malware. There is also workload pattern anomaly detection in IBM Spectrum Protect that monitors backup ingest rates as well as deduplication rates, again, as these can be a symptom of a cyber attack. And finally, we also work with technology partners such as Predator that can help us scan the backup data and look for infection signatures and automate the process of cleaning this data in an isolated environment. IBM provides capabilities all the way from the primary systems where the data lives through the backups and can provide insights in each of these locations. The next capability that is needed is pervasive encryption. IBM's primary storage Flash systems have self-encrypting drives or SEDs that are FIPS 142 certified, and with IBM Spectrum Virtualize, we can simplify data encryption in the data center with a single point of control for encryption across multiple storage arrays from a variety of vendors. Additionally, with IBM Spectrum Protect and IBM Spectrum Protect Plus, we encrypt data in flight and at rest to ensure the data can't be read as it moves through the environment. IBM's thought leadership when it comes to security is second to none. IBM is even enhancing its tape encryption to make it virtually impenetrable. In 2019, IBM released a demo of the new quantum computing safe encryption algorithms from Zurich Research for tape. The NIST standard board is still in the process of finalizing the selections for algorithms for quantum encryption. It's expected to complete at the end of this year or early 2022. Once NIST has finalized the algorithms, IBM will incorporate them into our products and release them. And just like most of our technology, once implemented in the field and practiced in our tapes, this capability will move further into the rest of our storage portfolio. Snapshots can help speed time to recovery, but should the attack have infected the data long ago, they may not be a snapshot of data from multiple months ago. And going back to tape could be the only clean copy of the data. So speaking of data copies and recovery, to ensure the best overall protection, businesses do not rely on only one capability for protection. There are different SLAs for different workloads and applications, ranging from those where you cannot afford to have any downtime or data loss to those where some level of data loss or extended recovery time may be acceptable. For example, workloads that you are currently running with a high availability solution or doing synchronous mirroring to a DR site, you need a solution that similarly keeps the recovery time objective and recovery point objective as close to zero as possible, even in the event of a cyber data corruption. There is not one answer to all the workloads or data states, right? Each type of layer or protection has its own pros and cons. For example, local and isolated snapshots are great, but what if the entire array is impacted? The need to go to a separate device will be necessary. Then you have the need to recover quickly. Streaming backups to tape with true air gap can be the most secure, but it also takes a lot longer to recover from. Then there are costs. Each of these solutions comes with a cost. Some are less expensive than others, but may cause longer outages because they need more time to recover. The real question is how to balance that business need. The graph you see on this slide can help by aligning recovery speeds with type of protection capability. For example, when it comes to a cyber attack, malware can lie dormant in the environment for many days before it is found. Having multiple protection points can help save a company, and that is where something like tape can play a key role. Snapshots can also speed time to recovery, but should the attack have infected data long ago, they may not be a snapshot of data from multiple months ago. Going back to tape may be the only clean copy of the data. The business needs to look at what they need in order to recover to meet the SLAs and implement the right solution. Ensuring data stays available to your applications is the primary function of a storage organization or a storage system. Right? IBM Flash Systems with Spectrum Virtualize provides multiple ways to make this happen. In today's multi-cloud reality, organizations are working in multiple locations comprised of both on-premise and public clouds. A storage software foundation such as IBM Spectrum Virtualize that supports over 500 different arrays enables the ability to deploy consistent storage services on-premises and storage systems and on clouds. This provides the greatest flexibility to leverage the multiple infrastructure locations for operational resiliency. In this slide, we have outlined some samples of common configurations, but it's certainly not an exhaustive list. These systems are capable of traditional 2-site and 3-site replication using synchronous and asynchronous techniques. They're also capable of utilizing IBM Hyperswap. When properly deployed, Hyperswap can guarantee 100% data availability. Specific to IBM Flash Systems, we have a number of built-in security features. These start with encryption and cryptography erasure. IBM Flash Systems have FCMs, or flash core modules, that each have SEDs or self-encrypting drives with media encryption keys for each drive. Each drive security encryption is FIPS 140-2 certified, and when it's time to securely erase the drive, the media encryption key and the wrapped key structure where this key is stored are both overwritten to ensure the encrypted data on the drive cannot be decrypted, providing full protection. Lastly, Spectrum Virtualize with its latest capability, safeguarded copy, can create multiple immutable snap copies of the data to recover from. I'll get into safeguarded copy in a little more detail in the next slide. When it comes to recoveries, snapshots provide the fastest solution. Also, snapshotting data to immutable storage can add a layer of protection as well as fast recovery. It is important to follow the best practices of first recovering that snapshot to an isolated environment so as to not impact production data in a negative way, and then investigate to make sure the recovered data is clean and free of ransomware. IBM provides 2 solutions that help customers follow these steps. The first is safeguarded copy that provides high-frequency, short-term snapshots with fast recovery. It takes a full snapshot of a volume and then puts this data copy in an immutable volume on the array. IBM also has Spectrum Protect Plus, a modern snapshot-based data resilience solution that moves data off the array and puts it onto a remote device that can be worm protected. There are incremental forever snapshots that save space and can have compression and deduplication applied to them. This means you can have many copies of these snaps to recover from, providing the ability to roll back further in time to find a clean copy of the data. We've mentioned air gap a few times now, but I think it's important to delineate between different types of air gaps. Quite frequently, we hear the term logical air gap. This is referring to locking data down in such a way that it can't be tampered with. The forms of logical air gap we talk about here, as of this moment, have yet to be penetrated. But as I always say, to clients, hackers will figure out how to get at this data if it is connected in any way to any network. The question is, do you want to be the first one to have to report a breach when they figure it out? The least secure air gap would be the cloud. In a sense, data can be hidden off the main corporate networks by creating a copy of it onto a cloud provider. This data is not impenetrable, but it can act as a line of defense if hackers find data on-prem, but not a copy of the data. It is offsite on a separate network. The next more secure logical air gap would be object storage. Object storage, such as IBM's cloud object storage, cannot be overwritten, but it can be erased. You can take it to the next level, and we've added worm, write one, read many capability to IBM's cloud object storage and Spectrum Virtualize. Next is the immutability that is available with IBM Flash System and Spectrum Virtualize with non-erasable, non-rewritable volumes. A copy of data is put into this volume with safeguarded copy and is immutable. And then, of course, there is the most secure form of air gap, and that is tape. As of right now, tape is the only physical air gap. With tape, the media the data was written to can be removed from the device, which removes it from any network connection, so it's not accessible by any attacker. As you all may be aware, IBM is the world leader in tape solutions. The next and one of the most important components to data resilience, as I mentioned earlier, is automation and orchestration. Here again, IBM partners with Predator and Cobalt Iron to help customers automate and orchestrate the recovery of their data. Okay. This takes out the element of human error, particularly in the case of an attack where things can be elevated in terms of human error, right? In addition, having automation can help operationalize a runbook for the recovery. This also enables customers to practice data recovery simply and easily. And by doing so, customers can streamline the recovery process and ensure that when an attack does happen, they have the confidence that they can recover quickly and accurately in a controlled manner. These attacks that I was talking about are very real and happening more and more every day. We hear about it in the newspaper, in the industry press all the time. So the real question to ask is, do you feel prepared? In just 7 of the more recent attacks just this year, businesses have paid out an average of $7.5 million to ransomware gangs and paid millions in fine for breach of data. These excerpts that you see from the press highlight the growing threat of these kind of attacks. It is time to be prepared. Are you prepared? I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you found this information helpful. My team and I will stay on the session to answer any questions you may have.